Ons eerste gas in die ateljee van finansies, iets wat jou hartklopings kan gee, hartprobleme ook, cholesterol. En dit is professor Nola Dippenaar, fisioloog, eienaar van Health Insight. Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you a morning person?
Yes, I love the mornings.
Oh, fantastic, to be healthy. Cholesterol, the moment I hear cholesterol, for me it's a bad thing. The first thing in my brain says, bad, heart attack, death. Is it the right way to think about it, or can it be my friend?
No, absolutely. Actually, cholesterol is so vital for our body.
You see, I didn't know that.
Unfortunately, over the years, it's been demonized. But if we think about it, 80% of your cholesterol is synthesized in your liver every day. And we also get a little bit from our food. But if we don't take any cholesterol in our food, our liver simply makes more. And it has so many functions in the body. For example, all of your steroid hormones, which we wouldn't like to be without, like testosterone, estrogen, cortisol, etc., all made from cholesterol. Then another very important substance that's synthesized is the vitamin D in your skin. So the cholesterol in your skin is converted by the sun rays, UVB rays, into vitamin D. Cholesterol is also vital for the component of every cell membrane. Now, if we just think of the human brain, 25% of the total cholesterol of the body is in the brain.
Sure.
In other words, or another way of expressing it is 1/5 of the weight of your brain is cholesterol.
I've never, and it's fascinating because, I mean, and it's so true, because for me, it is someone demonized it.
Yes.
For me, it's just a bad thing. If you've got like a problem with your cholesterol, no cholesterol, what do you take to give yourself more cholesterol? Because for me, it's like, no, you must take it away. But sometimes you need it.
Yes, it's very unlikely that you'll have low cholesterol unless you are on cholesterol-lowering drugs.
Okay.
Because automatically your liver will synthesize it.
Okay.
The problem is if it's too low, that's also, of course, has health implications for the body. So generally what we're worried about is if the cholesterol is too high. But what's important there is, I think that's an oversimplification to just look at your total cholesterol. We now know that we must actually go much further into the whole matter.
Sure. A typical indication, that kind of high cholesterol, and when does it become dangerous?
Well, I think, the last 70 years or so, we've believed if your total cholesterol is high, then you have a risk for heart disease. However, we now know that we need to look a little bit deeper, and we need to look at the individual fractions. And for a moment, I'd like to just stop. If we think of cholesterol as other fats, they're not water-soluble. So how are they transported in the bloodstream? So they're transported, the fats are surrounded by a layer of protein. So you have this lipoprotein package or particle that's now water-soluble. So when we talk about high cholesterol, we're actually talking about high lipoprotein particles, like the LDL. And so we now know that we need to look at the individual particles, and usually the ones that are reported are your LDL and your HDL, which used to be called the bad and the healthy. If we look at these, for example, the HDL, what's more important is to take your HDL value over your total cholesterol, and if that's above 25%, then you are fairly protected. But now we know even more detail, and that is, it's actually the size of the LDL particles and the number that is actually your risk factor. And so there's another ratio, because that's an expensive test to do, to go a step further and analyze your LDL size, particle size, and the number. So there's another ratio that gives us a fairly good indication of that, and that is by taking your triglyceride level, which is also measured when you do a lipogram, and putting that over your HDL level. If that is under 0.87, then it means it's a fairly good indicator of the size of the LDL particles. And that's really where the danger lies.
You just mentioned that if you overcompensate and it ends up being low cholesterol, there might be certain challenges as well. Yes. What are these challenges? What do they include?
Well, I think the cholesterol is so vital for all these functions we've discussed. I mean, another important function we haven't even mentioned is it forms bile acids. So we even use the old cholesterol, which is carried back to the liver by your HDL particles, and we even use that to form bile acids, which helps with the digestion of fat in the gut. So cholesterol, and many studies have also shown that if your cholesterol levels are too low, it has a profound effect on brain function.
Wow.
And it contributes to things like depression and neurological symptoms.
And it makes sense
So-
because of 25% of
definitely,
cholesterol is in the brain. It's
Absolutely,
amazing. I'm
absolutely.
learning a
It is
lot. Ons gaan nou verder gesels. Ek het gedog ons het net die age al. Maar ons het baie ander meer hier in ons lewe. We're talking about cholesterol. You've changed a lot of things in my brain already. And I didn't know there's 25% cholesterol in my brain. But even with normal cholesterol doesn't mean you're out of danger.
Not at all. I think that's what's so important these days is to actually go a little deeper and look at the number and the size of the LDL particles. The smaller this, I think a nice way of looking at it is if the LDL particles are big, fluffy beach balls, they're of little danger. But if you have lots of small, dense golf balls, they're the very particles, those LDL particles, are able to move through the linings of your blood vessel walls more easily, where they get oxidized and lead to inflammation, and that is far more damaging for you. So I think that's a very important thing is that we need to actually look deeper and actually see, because the more small, dense LDL particles you have, the much bigger the risk is for heart disease.
And that's actually what you do. We quickly discussed it. I mean, you can go, you do a normal cholesterol test just at your GP, but we actually need to go that little bit deeper and further.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so even if your cholesterol is normal, it doesn't mean you're protected.
No.
It's important to really understand fully what the lipogram actually tells you. But I also think at the same time, the body's complex. So we need to look at some other blood tests that that have a very good link with your lipogram, like, for example, the levels of your inflammation in the body at that moment, and particularly what your glucose and insulin levels are.
If you say you should investigate more in depth, from what age would you then say would be the ideal time?
Well, I think even from the minute you leave school, one should actually do just a few basic blood tests, just to get a very good base level. And I think it's like taking your car for a service every year. I think it's important for once a year to just check in and do a few of these blood tests, which I like to call health markers or risk factors. And the value is really comparing it to next year. Because as the levels change, it's like flashing lights. And there's so much we can do about it. And the earlier we detect this, the more we can do.
Because they call it the silent killer. You play golf and go for a couple of years and months, this cholesterol builds some stuff up, and the next moment you get a heart attack. But what are some of these symptoms? How I'm going to feel is something I can detect, but just like feeling dizzy.
When your cholesterol is increased, especially if your small, dense lipoprotein particles are there's a greater number and size, a smaller size and greater number, you're not going to really know about it. That's why it's so important to do annual blood tests to check in. You will only know, of course, it's like blood pressure. You're not even, that's also a silent killer. You're not aware of it until, of course, it's very bad. And then you might experience dizziness or you don't feel headaches, you don't feel good. So I think, especially at a young age, the more we take responsibility for our own health, the better.
And then the type of medicine that's prescribed for low cholesterol or high cholesterol, what's the best solutions in terms of medicine?
Well, I think for low cholesterol, it's very unlikely that you'll have low cholesterol unless you are on cholesterol-lowering medication. For high cholesterol, there are lots of drugs on the market to lower it. But the point is, usually with that, there's inflammation and there's usually high glucose levels as well. So I think it's far better to stand back and maybe look at your whole total lifestyle. Of course, nutrition is part of that. But I think we need to look at things like smoking, lack of physical activity, too much alcohol. And then when we come to nutrition, I think we need to be careful about cutting out fats. The old myth of fats are unhealthy for us, fats make us fat, is completely incorrect. We need a fair amount of our diet to be healthy fats. The fats we should try and avoid, which increases cholesterol are trans fats and lots of
Saturated
processed
fats.
foods
Yes.
with rich in omega-6. So that's very much your fast foods. And then what we should also be very careful of is a high intake of carbohydrates and sugars, refined carbohydrates. Everything
Sugars.
white sugar, white flour. That increases, of course, the
Yes.
glucose, which increases small, dense LDL.
All I've heard now is the choppy is still my friend. And that's good news. Ons het nog 'n paar vrae. Cholesterol, we've learned a lot. But the relationship between chronic inflammation in my body and cholesterol. But first, for me, inflammation means I've got the flu. You know, so
Yes.
and it's also a bigger concept.
Yes. Well, inflammation is the basis of all pathology in the body. Whenever, at the basis of any disease is this big fire of inflammation that's burning. And part of it, inflammation is there to protect us, but sometimes when it's chronic and uncontrolled, it's actually doing a fair amount of damage as well. And particularly when there's inflammation in the blood vessel wall, if there are lots of small, dense LDL particles, as we've discussed, they can move into this area more easily. They're easily oxidized, and they contribute to that inflammatory process and, of course, damage the blood vessel wall. So inflammation is something that we need to be very conscious of. And it's another one of the blood tests that I think, something called HSCRP, highly sensitive CRP. It's a very good indicator to measure annually. And it's a reflection of the total level of inflammation in your body at any particular time.
And the more overweight you become, the more the inflammation.
Absolutely.
grows as well. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's
Stress
danger.
drives inflammation, but so does particularly waist circumference.
That's the other question: stress and cholesterol. Does it help, or is also making it worse?
Well, when you have chronic inflammation in the body, then often your cholesterol levels will actually rise because you are using that cholesterol to heal and repair damaged cells. And at the same time, often when you are chronically stressed, that's when you're just trying to cope. And that's when a lot of your lifestyle factors fall by the way. And we resort lots to hard food. We're feeling sad, mad, glad, or bored. And that's when we tend to eat more refined carbs, more fast foods, things that are quick and easy, because we're just trying to handle the situation. And of course, that doesn't help the cholesterol either.
A quick question: cholesterol with depression, aggression, violence, can it also have an influence?
Yes, definitely because of that high content of cholesterol in the brain. Cholesterol in the brain plays a vital role with communication between brain cells, helps with memory formation, etc. So if your cholesterol levels are too low, that is going to be a contributor towards depression and other neurological problems.
The next time someone's going to lose their temper with me, I'm just going to say, I'm not talking to your cholesterol any further. Because it's in
I
the
have
brain.
2 eggs.
Yeah, that cholesterol. You've got a talk in Pretoria. That's tomorrow evening at Brooklyn Theatre.
Yes.
And it's about cholesterol. And I think it's in the heart of Pretoria. But luckily, you also work in Health Insights also in Cape Town. So we'll keep them updated. But for people that's interested, and at what time tomorrow night?
7 o'clock tomorrow evening at Brooklyn Theatre.
Well, I've learned a lot, and I
very
think
much.
you know a lot about other stuff, so we'll definitely see you again as a guest. And
Thank you.
I'll come for my blood tests. Henry, jy gaan saam.
Ek gaan saam. Ek
Huh?
sal saam huil.
Thank you very
Samuel.
much. I look forward to seeing you both.